Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the only global podcast purely focused on cycling style, fashion, aesthetics, lifestyle, and culture. I'm your host, Alex, joined by my world famous co-hosts, Warren and Tony. And Cycling Fashion Week is brought to you by Le Club. Le Club believes that every rider should demand more from their cycling experience. And that's why you should go to leclub.cc and check out the world's best selection of incredible apparel and accessories from the best kit companies. They've got MAAP, they have Albion, fingers crossed socks, Sweet Protection helmets, Alba Optics glasses. They've got it all. They are actually launching their fall collections right now. It's all on the website at leclub.cc. And they also have the best coffee in the business, roasted right here in Montreal. They do worldwide shipping, leclub.cc. Check them out. Use the code FashionWeek15 and get 15% off the best cycling apparel over at leclub.cc. Fashion Week 15. Use that code. Warren and Tony, what's going on this week?
Well, Labor Day has come and gone, which I think, I don't know if it's sort of the official sort of season calendar, but really officially marks the end of summer. So it's time to pack away your white bibs. No white bibs after Labor Day. I believe that's the rule.
And just for our international listeners here, we're talking about North American Labor Day, which is September, which is the first Monday of September. I know that our good friends in the UK and in Europe have, I believe, what they call May Day, which is their version of Labor Day, where they sing communist songs and the International and all this. But we have a different Labor Day here.
Kids are going back to school. People are going back to, off their vacations and stuff. So it marks the end of summer. And the more important point isn't so much to put away your white bibs, because, I mean, you had a great run in the summer, all the white bib wearers, but is I successfully completed one whole summer without using a bike computer or Strava, just freewheeling it, just enjoying the sensation of the bike, really becoming one with the bike, one with the road, not thinking about numbers and speed and heart rate. And so now that it's over, I think I'm going to put the computer back on, or at least the mount back on, and then kind of judge what rides feels like, feels what needs a computer. But it was a successful experiment. I don't know if that's probably not the right word, but it felt pretty good. I liked it, but I can't lie. There is some element of, of me, which I'm sure a lot of people, if they might try this, that is curious about their numbers. I mean, I don't have a power meter, so I'm sort of missing that, but sometimes I like to see how fast we're going, or, heart rate and stuff. So I think having it sometimes, I think I've come to the conclusion that sometimes is good. Sometimes just leave it off the mount.
I thought you said you were doing the whole year, and now you're just ending it at the end of the summer.
No, I think I always said the summer.
I'm not going to go back and check previous episodes, but I feel like you said the whole year.
Well, then if I said the whole year, I guess I can't put it back on, but I've already done it. So this is now changed.
Wow,
to the
so
summer.
you were eager to put it back on then.
Well, Warren, we have a nice hard ride tomorrow, a nice fast ride with some of the young kids in the neighborhood that are going to put us through our paces. And I wanted to check my heart rate, and which I often forget to put the heart rate monitor on when I leave on early morning rides. I wanted it for this particular ride.
I understand.
I'm pretty sure I said summer, Alex. Alex, we need you to chime in.
I don't know. What I do know, I have no idea, Tony. I can't hold you accountable to all the crazy takes you dish out on this podcast. What I do know is that I have been on and off with the computer this summer. I'd say more on than off. Really, the only times that I've been off is when I've been with you guys, because I just don't have a computer in Toronto. But when I've been riding at my place here, I've been using the computer, using the power meter, but no Strava. And to be honest with you, I don't think I'm going back to Strava. My profile's out there, it's open, but I don't post my rides anymore. And I've found that quite liberating, actually. And it has gotten me to question the benefit of Strava. Like, why do people put rides on Strava? Are you trying to, I don't know, like measure yourself against other people, and you're trying to show people that you ride a lot? I just don't really get it. It hasn't. So that's
exactly what I'm doing.
Doesn't do much for me, Warren, to show off in the virtual world, right? Like that. I prefer to show off in the real world.
I like to do both. So Yeah, I just translate my showing off in the real world into showing off on Strava.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I need to go back to Strava. That doesn't concern me as much, the social media, because I mean, you can still look all the numbers Strava gives you, right? You can look at on the Garmin or Wahoo app.
Well, that's the thing is people who say they use Strava for the analytics. Well, the analytics is a lot better on the Wahoo platform than it is on Strava. People who say they use Strava for maps, well, I mean, this is Ride with GPS. There's a lot
The
of other stuff
Strava
out
map
there.
builder is better than Ride with GPS and the Garmin, I will say. And I know people who,
But you got to pay for it.
yeah, I know. I'm just saying it is better.
Or Warren, are you saying you're part of the 1% and you have Strava Premium?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Oh man, Warren's part of the elite. Warren's
Ah,
part of the elite class. The
I
Strava
pay
Premium.
$80 per year to use Strava Premium. And to be honest, it auto renewed this year and I forgot about it. They didn't warn me. I would have canceled it.
I do agree though. Ride with GPS is terrible at measuring elevation
Yes.
profile. Like for example, I'll build a 70 or 80 kilometer loop, and it tells me there's 600 meters of climbing, and then I actually ride the thing, and there's 1600 meters of climbing. It's off by just a little bit.
Strava's a bit better. They're all bad for that.
This week we have an interesting episode. So we are interviewing upstart brand Encore Encore from right here in Montreal. Very interesting conversation with those two guys, Samuel and Maxime from Encore Encore, where conversation was very wide ranging. It went from how do you actually start a brand? How do you bootstrap a brand? You have an idea, you want to start a kid brand. How do you start that? Who do you call? Where do you go? How do you operationalize the brand, the cycling brand startup, so to speak? We talked about that. We also talked about why Quebec is the beating heart of Canadian cycling. We are actually recording this the week before the Grand Prix Cycliste de Québec and the Grand Prix Cycliste de Montréal, which two biggest monuments in pro cycling. I think we can all agree that's happening this weekend. So we recorded this the week before. We had a long chat with those guys from Encore Encore about their history, their brand, how do you start a brand, and about cycling in Canada and more specifically in Quebec. That's coming later today on the podcast. Warren and Tony, have you been watching the Vuelta at all?
No. Well, not at all. I always like tune in a little bit, but not really.
No, not really. Here and there.
Let's shake things up a little bit on this podcast. I'm going to do my Canal at the beginning of the program today. You guys can do yours at the end as per usual, but we're going to shake things up a little bit just because I brought up the Vuelta. This is becoming an annual tradition here on Cycling Fashion Week, where as soon as, well, Tony said Labor Day is on the calendar. I'll say as soon as Starbucks gets out the pumpkin spice latte on the menu. Shout out Ashton Lambie, big pumpkin spice latte fan. That is the time of the year that I throw the Vuelta in the Canal. I did it last year. I'm going to do it again. Going to have to apologize to our good friend David Millar, whose favorite Grand Tour is the Vuelta. As a spectator, as a fan of the pro sport of cycling, the Vuelta is my least favorite Grand Tour. I said it last year. I'm going to say it again. I hate the red jersey. I think it looks ugly. I don't like it. It's not as iconic as the yellow jersey or the Maglia Rosa in the Giro. They've changed the colors about a million times. It used to be the gold jersey, then it was the red jersey. That's bad. Tony talked about it last episode. Those Dutch stages were absolutely brutal to watch. They were incredibly boring. And there's just been a lot of very, very boring stages on the Vuelta this year. The other thing as well, and that's maybe regional for me, but I'm in the northern hemisphere. In early September, the air is crisp, the leaves are turning red, it's getting very fall like, and I'm watching these guys ride in 50-degree weather in Andalusia, which does not inspire me. I don't like it. I don't like the Vuelta as well because it's in competition with the two greatest races in the world, the Grand Prix Cycliste de Québec, Grand Prix Cycliste de Montréal. It is beyond me while a rider would choose to ride the Vuelta instead of one of those two monuments. Much more prestigious to come race here in Quebec. So yeah, Vuelta's in the Canal. I'm going to do this once a year in September. Vuelta is in the Canal.
Should the Vuelta just be like axed altogether? Like we just need two Grand Tours. You get the kind of excitement of May and the Giro, because it's sort of like this, we've had obviously had the classics and stuff, but you get the excitement of that Giro coming to May, the weather's getting nice, everyone's trying to ride more, everyone's kind of into it, and then the tour is just sort of this pinnacle, and it's July, and it's just...
I have a better idea. We downgrade the Vuelta from Grand Tour status. We make it a 1-week race, and we upgrade the Tour of Britain, which happens at about the same time, to Grand Tour status. We make it 3 weeks. And Tour of Britain gets to go to Cornwall, which is Matt Stevens' favorite region to ride. You go through different regions of Great Britain.
I think I'm with you, because I think this is a total like North American, or like just like Northern Hemisphere bias. So like the Australians and Southern Hemisphere people don't have to agree with it, but like I think I would prefer the British weather, like sort of August, September weather, to to keep me kind of inspired. Like you're right, like the problem with the Vuelta is that it's still sort of warm there in certain, in Spain. And so you're still kind of like watching summer riding, but we're at the end of our summer riding.
And I don't find the landscapes that inspiring in the Vuelta as well. I find that very often they're just riding on like a pack of rocks, basically. It's not as inspiring as the Giro or as the Tour de France or Tour of Britain, which has incredible landscapes. As
You certainly wouldn't make Tour of Holland a 3-week stage race, would you?
oh God, they were, how many stages did they do in
3?
this? There was 3 too many. It was
Yeah.
it was not good. But look, I've been to the Netherlands, beautiful areas. They just didn't happen to ride through them in the Vuelta this year. Anyway, this is becoming my annual tradition. Every year in September, I throw the Vuelta in the Canal, and I'm going to do it this year as well. So we shook things up a little bit. We did my Canal at the beginning, but I had to dish it out. Okay, for our next segment, next up on Cycling Fashion Week, we welcome, I would say, an upstart brand from my hometown of Montreal, Quebec. Cool new brand that launched, I would say, about a year ago, or they'll tell us all about that. Their name is Encore Encore, so nice French name. They have been, I guess they've become pretty famous, I would say, around Montreal and in Quebec. A lot of people wearing the kit. And we decided to feature them because we've been talking to a lot of international brands from the UK, from the US, from Australia, but we haven't really featured a lot of Canadian brands on the podcast. And we wanted to give a shout out to our home country, and more specifically my hometown. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to have a quick conversation with 2 young gentlemen, Maxime Boulet and Samuel Sanson, the founders of Montreal-based brand Encore Encore. They've, like I said, they've become famous for their kit. They have one jersey that's quite popular and pretty ubiquitous, I would say, around Montreal. It's the marble jersey. So if you ride around Montreal, you would have seen that probably. Maxime and Samuel, welcome to Cycling Fashion Week.
Well, thanks for having us, guys. Yeah, thanks for having us.
So tell us about your story, how you started, but also one thing we like to ask all of our guests is what was your first connection to cycling? How did you get into cycling? Were you a skateboarder who got into cycling? That's the answer we always get. Usually I'd say 90% of the people to whom we ask that question were skateboarders.
He's wearing a Palace sweatshirt.
Oh, is it a Palace sweatshirt? Oh my God. I only saw the sort of the peak of the triangle, but I didn't see the rest of the triangle.
There's no way these guys aren't best friends with everyone from Dime.
For our listeners who aren't skateboarders, Dime is the sort of Montreal version of Palace. Can I say that? The
Dime's way cooler than Palace. Dime's way cooler than Palace.
I was gonna say, yeah, I would agree for sure.
If you follow them on Instagram at Dime MTL, they make kind of funny skateboard videos. They're pretty funny, actually. So they're kind of they're a skateboard clothing and skate shop in general. So God, I didn't realize that he was wearing a Palace sweatshirt. So Tony, you just answered my question.
Well, let's let them answer. Maybe he's just a hype beast, and he's never touched a skateboard in his life, and it's just about the look.
Well, we definitely started like 16 years ago. We met initially snowboarding, probably. We used to ride for one of the same snowboarding brands back in the day. Then we worked at Axis Board Shop, if anyone's familiar with that, in Saint-Sauveur. So
I'm a skier, not a snowboarder.
Well, it's a ski shop also, right?
Okay.
So they,
Well, I'm
yeah, yeah.
Eastern Townships, not Laurentians.
So it was a pretty cool local ski snow skate shop in the Laurentian. So we worked there for what, like 4 or 5 years together. So definitely the background is from snowboarding for both of us. But we definitely then, I guess, transitioned. I went on to work as a sales rep for Vans. Sam was a rep for Oakley. Then I worked for Adidas. Sam did as well. And yeah, basically always been in that industry, both of us, for the last 15, 16 years. But it's been super close friendship through the whole time.
Yeah, and then I mean, as far as transition to cycling, so we don't pretend that we have like this big history or heritage of cycling. Obviously, like we're still, I would say, quote unquote, new to cycling. I think I discovered the sport, I think probably 6 to 7 years ago. Obviously, I was riding a bicycle in my younger ages, but nothing like as serious as now. And it really, for me, it started when I was working for Oakley. Obviously, I was doing some events with, like, say, cycling events, triathletes event. I was seeing all these guys cycling, all that stuff. And if you were to bet me at that time that I was gonna wear lycra and shave my legs 5 years from then, I wouldn't believe you. But now here I am. I'm having this small cycling brand. I'm cycling, I'd say, 6 days a week. So yeah, and it's a true passion for me. Yeah.
So you're confirming you shave, not wax.
I do shave, no wax. I haven't tried the wax yet.
Because Alex is a wax, and just before we came to Montreal for our MAAP ride, I shaved and cut the shit out of my leg. I think I was using an older razor, and I was like, man, I just got to go to waxing.
Here's the deal with waxing. You got to do it a lot less than if you shave. And I'm not a very hairy guy, so I waxed my legs maybe a week before the MAAP ride. They were still smooth during the big MAAP community ride. So everybody in Montreal saw my smooth legs. They didn't see my hairy legs. And now how many weeks has that been, Tony? Like, was that a week ago, 2 weeks ago? I can't remember. It was 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
So, and now it's just starting to regrow. And my legs still look pretty good. If you see me on a ride, like, you couldn't tell that it's been regrown. So, like, you get a lot of bang for your buck by just waxing your legs. Like, it lasts a long time, for me anyway.
Maybe Sam can wax my legs.
maybe do that now. It hurts a little bit.
Cutting up your shin with a I mean, it wasn't like a rusty razor. I wasn't using one from like prison or something, but just obviously one that probably needed the head to be changed. I just nicked it, and it's still kind of scarring. So I think I'm gonna go to a wax next.
Absolutely wild that we took a tangent from snowboarding to waxing your legs here, but that's Cycling Fashion Week for you.
I was just thinking, if someone could just tune into this section and not know the name of this podcast and just talk about 4 dudes in their like 20s and 30s talking
beauty
about,
with Tony.
Shaving and waxing legs and the benefits of it would just be wild.
But Tony, like, explain to me, that's something I've never understood, because Tony, you've been closer to it than I've been, and actually Max and Sam as well. Like, what is it about snowboard, skateboard culture that segues into cycling? I don't get it personally.
I think it's that weird thing of like community, but also individualism, where people, it's like you've got this thing you can do with a lot of people and have this kind of like collective sharing, but you can do it also by yourself and never need anybody if you don't want them to be there. And then there's also a lot of like things that go along with it, with sort of like greater culture. So for skateboarding, it's like gets most kids, they start with skateboarding, gets them into fashion, art, music, making stuff, DIY. So why don't we let the people we're interviewing answer?
Yeah, I never even seen it from that point of view. But I think the other thing is also that it's a sport where you can excel at when you're older, and like any other sport where it's technical, like snowboarding, skateboarding, there's a certain barrier when you're getting, you're growing past your 30s.
I'm going to stop you right there. We don't excel at anything on this podcast. Like, we're just out there, but we do not excel.
I know you guys were at the club ride with the MAAP we were at, and we unfortunately didn't meet, but yeah, if you'd seen us there, you would have seen that we don't excel on the bike.
I mean, we were in the fast group, but yeah,
the back of the fast group, but we were there.
That's perfectly fine. And that's one thing that, I mean, for myself, that maybe on the cycling side, that didn't really attract me. The fact that everything needs to be performance. Like, obviously we like to ride fast, we like to go and everything, but for us it's more about gathering. It's more about, like, obviously, like, you want to push yourself and everything, but it's more about like the community and riding with people that you enjoy with, and obviously having a beer after. It's more like everything that surrounds it that attracts us, I would say.
I'm a community guy now. I think we've established that.
But that's the thing. That's the beauty of cycling and skateboarding, and obviously snowboarding as well and stuff, is that, like, you also don't need the community. So it's like you can have it if you want it, but then it's like when I used to skate and you go and sometimes you just like need your own time. You didn't want anybody, and you can roll. Like, you don't actually need the people there to do it, right? They're just around you skateboarding, and it's a kind of could be a fun feeling. People talk to you, but they don't help you in any way, sort of like practical way. It's the same thing with cycling. I guess drafting kind of helps, but like you go out because you can socialize, but then if you just say like, fuck it, I just want a solo ride for myself, like you're still doing the exact same thing. It's not like playing tennis without a partner. That's just hitting a ball against a wall, right? That's awful.
But it's nuts to see how many people transitioned, honestly, like our close group of friends who never biked when you were 18, 19, 20 years old. And you're looking at it now, and all of those same friends are cycling now.
And shaving their legs.
And shaving their legs. It depends. Some are still not doing it, but
yeah, we have a couple of friends that we try to make them the move, but they're still hesitating a bit, I would say.
What made you go from cycling and shaving your legs to wanting to start an actual brand, especially like, there's obviously a lot of apparel brands out there, but as we've kind of lamented on this podcast, not that many Canadian ones. So what made you two decide to start Encore Encore?
The discussion started a lot earlier than last year, just because the process is so long, and building technical gear is obviously something where you need a good partner manufacturer. Me and Sam had always wanted to start, a company together, and having this passion for the last few years. When we started discussing it 3 years ago, we're like, the landscape of what cycling brands was not exactly the same. Sure, a lot of brands were there, 10 years ago, the Rafas, MAAPs, etc. But I guess the feel of what they were doing was not the same as what we have seen in the last couple of years from my point of view. So a lot of brands have evolved. It just wasn't at that point when we did start having those discussions.
So did you guys really start 3 years ago?
No, we actually launched last summer, so this is our second summer.
Okay.
But the process has been going on for at least three years and a half. But yeah,
because I only heard about you guys this year, and I feel like it's really this year that you guys kind of exploded in the Quebec scene, at least that I've seen you guys. I've heard about you guys a lot more, but that's like a really interesting thing you mentioned, like finding a good partner manufacturer is one of the first few steps when you launch a brand. Like, walk us through the process of launching a brand.
We thought it'd be easy because we, that's our background, right? Like, we come from that, the industry, not the cycling industry, but the, outdoor fashion, footwear industry. So we're like, oh, well, we have all the contacts, we know people that do private label, etc. But when you start getting into wanting to make technical cycling product and having good quality product, well, we started working with so the manufacturer we're working with now is the fourth or fifth one that we had samples made. A lot of the product that was just coming was just not up to, well, not my standards, because I would have started with the first manufacturer, but to Sam's standards, because he's a lot more picky. But for me, I was like, oh, the first samples, I'm like, these are good to go. Let's roll these out 3 years ago. And I'm really happy we didn't. But finding those manufacturers, honestly, that information is just not shared. It was dumb luck how we found the manufacturer that we actually work with right now, which is one of the bigger manufacturers in Italy, which is obviously amazing to work with. And it's been, a great ride with them for sure.
Is it true that the kit manufacturer landscape consists of like roughly 6 companies in northern Italy, and that they kind of share the market overall?
Yeah, I would say obviously like we haven't learned all the deepness of all this industry, but as far as we know, there's a few big manufacturers that own most of the markets, especially if you look at the top end of the brands.
Yeah. Most people do all their stuff in the same places. If you're making it in Italy, there's probably 2 manufacturers where you're working out of. If you're making it out of like Eastern Europe, there's a couple other countries that do manufacture some cycling apparel. But like obviously
what, Turkey, Albania,
Romania.
Romania, yeah.
Romania is a big one for sure. A lot of the brands actually work out of there. But yeah, for us, it was very important to make our product in Italy. It just had that
panache.
And yeah, panache. Exactly.
You're welcome.
Thank you. But it's definitely a place where we wanted to work with a manufacturer, but not everyone is as organized as the manufacturer that we're working with right now. So there were obviously a ton of hiccups. Initially, it wasn't a plan to make the product in Italy, and
Well, and Italians aren't always the most organized people either. I can say that.
you can say it. I can't say that, but you can.
No, but we've been warned by many people before starting, so you're not the first saying it.
I'm an honorary Italian. I speak the language. I'm married to half Italian, so I can probably afford to say that.
Also, those F1 fans out there, which I know there are many now, Ferrari sort of proves that they're definitely not the most organized. They've got incredible skill to create, but maybe not the best organization and strategy.
They've had a few tough races recently, for sure.
Okay, so you launch the brand, you reach out to manufacturers, you get some samples made, you decide to work with one manufacturer. Walk us through the other steps. Where do you go from there? Do you then order a bunch of kit that you design?
I don't know if you want to. Do we want to say that story about the logo when we first did the samples?
Yeah, I guess we can.
we want to hear it. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. So by the way, we when we first started, we had this logo, which was like some sort of a double E, and then there's like 3 stripes underneath each other. So we had a few bottles printed already. We had some musette already in the pipeline. We had a few stuff. And then 3 months in the process, we see that MAAP is having an advertisement for a new shade. I think they were releasing with 100% at the time. And at the same time, they're releasing a new logo, which was almost identical to our logo. Like I don't know how it happened, but theirs was like obviously like 4 stripes making like their flag logo, some sort of. Right away, Max called me and we're like, we can't go to market with this logo. So we basically had to scrap all these bottles, all these musettes, recycle everything, and go from scratch from there with a new logo and rebrand right before we launched.
It's a compliment on your design skills, because MAAP, I mean, is no slouch, right? They're a pretty good brand design wise. So if they design the same thing as you, now the only thing is they're a little bit bigger than you. So people are going to think that you copied them and not the other way around.
Exactly. So that's why we didn't go fight that battle.
To bore everyone to death, but just quickly, this is exactly why I have these comments against Brant Sorensen, is that in art, things can happen simultaneously with complete separation. That's all I'm saying. This is a perfect example of it. You guys didn't know what MAAP was doing. They didn't know what you were doing. And sometimes it just happens because it's the zeitgeist of design.
And actually, one question that we ask all of our guests: have you gotten sued yet by Brant Sorensen?
No, not yet.
But you better lawyer up, because you know it's coming.
Yeah.
I don't think he sues anybody. He just posts Instagram stories accusing them of stealing his shit. He's all talk and no action, as we know from him saying he'd be on this podcast and not being on it. I don't want to talk about this guy anymore. Let's talk about these guys who make good kit. They're a Canadian company.
To continue to Sam's story, actually, so we actually redesigned everything, and when we produced it, and maybe you were saying earlier, we never heard of you before this year, and so the first kits that we bought, we made 150 jerseys. But it sold so quickly. We had no sizes 2 weeks after. Like the day we launched, some sizes we only had 1. My mom cycles, so she bought 2. My dad cycles, he bought 2. Your friend's mom cycles. Everyone wants to support you so bad in the beginning, right? So you just run out of product super quickly on social media, which obviously drives most of your sales these days. We just kind of went dead for 6 months until we relaunched this year. And this year, obviously, we did more jerseys, vests, everything, and we really had a plan to be more active on social and have a more longevity of when we can sell our product. Yeah, we're trying to just grow organically and not push things too fast and go into wholesale and stuff like that. We really want to take it kind of step by step and build the brand organically and not have to rush anything, honestly.
We had a question. I think you've sort of answered it, because one of our questions was actually what your R&D process has been, because you're such a young brand, but you send us some kit and it's really good. And to be perfectly honest, like I was a little worried. It's like, we want to support this Canadian brand, but they're pretty new. What's it going to be like? It's legitimately, one of my go-to kits right now in the rotation, because and I think what you've just described about the process of finding the right manufacturing partner, whatever. But is there anything else that went into that R&D? Was it like based on the kind of kit you liked from other brands, or from your experience working at some of the other companies you mentioned, like Adidas and such? But is there anything else that went into that process?
Well, obviously, before starting our own brand, we were wearing the top end brands. So most of the ones that you already named. So obviously our standard were already really elevated. So that's why when we tested stuff, we were always referring back to these products. Also, I was working for Oakley before, and so I was seeing like, and they have more of a, I would say, commercial offering, maybe not as a premium and performance oriented, which is totally fine because this is more of their market. But so we had like a few examples of what we like, what we don't like, and then we tried to land the perfect product for or everyday cycling.
And you only have one shot, right? Like you're gonna sell a bib for $250 to $300. Like you want it to be good quality. You don't want the chamois to rip off. You want the fit to be good. You know what I mean? You don't want to have something that creates rashes on people and stuff like that. You know, we had in mind to bring a product to life that's, you know, up to par with everyone else. It's like it's not because you're a new brand that it's an excuse to give a subpar product for people that are going to pay $250 to $300 for a pair of bib shorts. Like, why would you buy our brand instead of Rafa or Panormal or MAAP or whatever it is, you know?
That's such a good point that you only get one shot, because I think in that market where, look, prices are pretty high overall, right? Like the unit, I don't know how you guys call this in sales, like the unit sales amount or something. Like when someone spends a certain amount of money on kit, it's a lot of money. And for most people, it's a good chunk of cash. And like if the product doesn't, work out, or as you say, the quality's not there, people won't usually come back to that product. I've had some experience with certain brands that I won't name where it's been kind of like that, where I was super excited to get it. I get it, and then I'm like, that's not so great, and I won't come back to it.
Yeah.
Same, and that's also one of the reasons why we started our own brand. We've been, I would say, a bit disappointed with some of the product what we bought. And as you mentioned, we're not selling T-shirt at the end of the day. So when you buy a bit, obviously you'll know right away if you like it, if you're not, and if you don't like it, you'll go to another brand. There's so many options on the market that you want to retain your customer. You want to make sure that you bring the best product to the market. So that's why we try to do.
Also, the opinion of in the cycling world of kit is very strongly shared, sort of either way, right? So if you produce something people didn't like, they would let everyone know, whether it's just their local club or some people who are, into, message boards and that kind of stuff. And it's sort of like the one shot thing is really true, because if someone gets something they don't like, they will tell everyone, and they won't even say, well, it wasn't for me. They'll say, this was the worst piece of garbage I've ever had. Right. I spent this much money. This is so awful. I can't believe this. You really have no chance to screw up, because then everyone in that kind of market here, oh yeah, that place is, so there's that company's so expensive, and I heard they're just awful and they're uncomfortable. And kudos to you guys. I think you've done a great job for kind of an early iteration.
It echoes a lot in the small community. You guys saw the ride that you put up with Le Club. There was 120 people. If 5 people at the coffee shop say the bibs suck, well, that's just exponential. That's 25 people. And then they go to the next ride, and that's 125 people and whatever. So
tell us about the name. That's one of the things I found the coolest about you guys when I first heard about the brand, was the name Encore Encore. I love that it's a French name. You guys are from Quebec. You decided to go with a French name. I really appreciated that. Tell us about the story behind the name.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. Obviously, since we're French, we wanted to have like something that a bit sounds good to us, but also that can be pronounced in English. Encore, 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 encore. You can, whatever you want to float your boat. Usually we say encore, encore. And also it's a bit of an homage to I would say the repetitive action of cycling. It's always like doing more, and that's why we also released this week a T-shirt with our new slogan, which is the extra mile. So based off encore, encore, you always want to go the extra mile. That's a bit of a play of word, also being like quality stuff, but also going the extra mile on the bike, doing a little bit more.
Pretty simple, to be honest. Like, we didn't read some philosophical book and have a quote that stood out or anything. Like, there's not the biggest story about it. Sounded good, honestly. It's related to cycling, and it says, like, it's a French name. We're French at the end of the day. It's part of our culture. We wanted to have something that resonates with, the core of our business for us.
Speaking of Quebec and France, why do you think that Quebec seems to be the province, the kind of area carrying the torch for Canadian cycling? Like, obviously, a lot of the pros, the people on Israeli Premier Tech, and then you guys obviously are producing some nice kit, and even some of the other kit companies that are coming out of Canada, Peppermint and Le Raquette and stuff, they're coming out of Quebec. What is it about the sort of culture of Quebec that seems to be feeding into cycling and sort of giving it this moment to kind of help prop up what seems to be a kind of, besides Warren and I in Toronto Cycling Fashion Week, the rest of the country seems to be kind of slacking a little bit?
Well, first, Quebec being a French province within an English country. I think it's always been a very tight knit community. Even going back to our snowboarding days, it's always been kind of the hub of snowboarding, if you will, for Canada. So I think that's just part of the culture. It's a very entrepreneurship culture for one, and it's a very tight knit culture. So when they grasp onto a certain, I guess, sport or trend or whatever, people come together very much. And I think it's not just for cycling, because obviously cycling, there's so many club. I don't know what it looks like in Toronto or Vancouver, but in Quebec, there's a club ride every morning, every evening of every day of the week, literally, from all the different the Messerem, Le Club. There's just a ton of them, and it's it's really cool to see. I'm not sure what makes it stand out, but it's probably just a cultural thing from the Quebec people.
Can I attempt an answer to that question, Tony, as well?
Of course.
As the resident Quebecer hosting the podcast. So it's an interesting question. Why would Quebec kind of be carrying the torch for Canadian cycling? I think there's predominantly two reasons, Tony. I think the first one is the historical connection to France. I think has played a big role there, because we've had the Tour de France on TV, I think, for longer than the rest of Canada has, because people kind of look up to France. There's a connection to France. And, if you grow up with somewhat Francophile parents, you will know about the Tour de France at a pretty young age. It will be on TV. That's kind of how I got into cycling. So that's the first thing. I'd say the connection to Europe via France. The second thing, and that's maybe a less known part of it, is I think the immigrant contribution to Quebec culture via Italian immigrants, especially in and around Montreal, I think has also played a huge role in developing the culture of road cycling in Quebec. Because if you look at people like Giuseppe Marinoni, who initially came here as a rider, like he came to Quebec to, I think, do a race. I think it might have been Quebec Montreal or Montreal Quebec, which was a big classic back in the 50s or 60s. He came here to do that, married a local woman, decided to stay here, became a frame builder. Or Tino Rossi, who started the Lachine Crit as well, another Italian, came from Italy, brought the culture over here. I think the immigrant contribution to the culture as well has been a big part of it. And I think that's why now you have that passion for the sport, and we have the Pro Tour race in Montreal as well. Anyway, that's my theory. Number one, the connection to France. Number two, the immigrant contribution.
It's a good answer, but Maxime's answer is better, because I think that the supportive nature of a close knit community is really something. Like yours is still very right, but I think in terms of like bringing it up where you have the high level pros, you have these like high level pros and stuff, it's because there's just so much kind of more support between it, and it does seem there's sort of more races. Like even the Lachine Crit was always so much higher level, and because I know it's sort of on pause or whatever, than the Toronto sort of local midweek.
The Ossington Crit or like midweek?
No, I'm talking about the midweek. Lachine happened every Tuesday, and it was kind of like analogous to the midweek, but it was like your average Joe wasn't going to just race in Lachine Crit. Like these guys were fast.
Yeah, it's high level.
A lot of them weren't pros. Whereas maybe Crit, these guys are fast. I can't keep up with them. I'm not saying I can, but it's not this kind of thing where you're like, holy shit, I can't believe these people are doing this, and they're just sort of like regular amateurs.
But is there a lot of club rides in Toronto, or is that
COVID's really done a number on them?
But they've never been open the way Montreal's is, right? Like it's like you can join a club that you pay for, and you have to have an OCA membership and all this stuff. Right. And then they'll organize rides, but this kind of like show up in the morning at a coffee shop, show up in the afternoon, the evening at a pub, ride with a group of people, that doesn't really exist. It's like unless it's like a personal thing, there's not a kind of just like everyone show up here at 8 a.m. and we're all going to ride.
It's more elitist.
It's far more elitist. It's unlike you guys who said you're trying to make this unpretentious. We're trying to make this as pretentious as possible.
And we respect that.
What was the quote? I lost my thing. What was the quote you said we were going to ask you about on your site? You said strives to bring a fresh but unpretentious perspective to cycling. I think the specific question was, how do you make that happen? Because we love being pretentious.
It kind of goes to the point where I was saying, like how this, well, from my point of view, at least, and I haven't been in the sport 15 years, but from my point of view, for when I started cycling to the point of now, when you're looking at where rides were 4 years ago, and I'm looking at like Sam was riding with certain clubs outside of Montreal, and where it's at now, it's just two worlds apart. I find we're looking at, much more, like you say, a little bit elitist, but maybe not in the best sense of the word. And what we are seeing now, which is just more, I guess, aligned with what we want to do about cycling, go on rides, have a coffee after, or go on rides, have a beer after, and that just wasn't what it was, 4 or 5 years when we were cycling and there was club rides. So I think it's really, about building a community where it's, I don't want to sound tacky, but non-judgmental, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, we have friends that, I have a ton of friends who are as slow as you can get on a bike, but we go and ride bikes with them and have beers after, and that's really what it's about for us.
And they're wearing Encore Encore, so they
Exactly.
look good.
And their customers also.
Well, I guess Toronto's still elitist because it's either you have an invite-only ride through your friends or people you know, or you have to pay a bunch of money to join a really crappy club.
Did you say pay?
Oh yeah, there's some clubs, yes, that you have
Most
to
of the
pay to
official
join.
rides will be run by an official OCA club affiliate, and you will have to not only buy some sort of membership to OCA, so you have insurance as well. You will have to pay a fee into that club.
Yeah,
You will never see us in any of those clubs, I can promise you.
Do you get a mechanics that follows you in those rides? You get like some drinks. I don't know. Like, is there an incentive to go?
You get an incredibly poorly designed local team kit you should be embarrassed to wear.
There is one club in Toronto and in some of the suburbs that I'm not going to name them, but I would say a lot of the members are probably like higher up in the business world. They're later in life than us. They got a lot of money, so you're not wrong.
A lot of Cervelos in this club.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
how old can they be if they're older than us? Like,
unfortunately, that's sort of your window to meet people, and then you eventually meet people who are doing other rides. And anyway, Toronto sucks for cycling. Is the old insert city name sucks for cycling here, but it's actually kind of true here.
Well, you guys are welcome to Montreal anytime you want to come by. We're very welcoming.
We'll come back for sure.
Obviously, we were big celebrities at the Le Club MAAP. I guess it was a cycling fashion week ride. We couldn't find you guys. I guess there was too many people talking to us or something.
We didn't know what you guys looked like. You're like you're hidden on the socials, so it's hard to identify, right?
Yeah.
We've poked out our heads a little bit recently, but we were pretty under the radar initially.
The club's forcing us to step into the public eye. Maybe this relates to what we were just talking about, but I think we've already talked about how there's not that many Canadian kit brands out there than yourselves, some of the other ones out of Quebec Tony mentioned, and then you've got your like Louis Garneau, which I don't even know if that's still Canadian.
That's not cycling fashion week material.
No, I know it's not, but it's still a kit brand. It just sucks. Do you have any theories as to why we don't see more Canadian kit brands? I don't expect you to have the answer. I'm just curious as two guys who have started one.
I don't, but honestly, the barrier to entry are very tough. So no matter where you are, Montreal or even anywhere in there, it just happened that maybe some of us in Montreal find a way to make it happen and do some great products. But it's as I said, like, it's not t-shirt, it's not like basic private label, so it's kind of the barrier to entry are very selective, I would say, if you want to bring something good to the market. So maybe that's why Montreal. I have no clue, to be honest.
It's also a very short window, right? Though, like, I mean, if you're in Canada, you have so many months to sell the product. If you're not selling outside of Canada, then there's midsummer sales in May from other brands, so it's hard to compete with some of the bigger brands at the same time.
There are some brands out there, but not a lot of them are nice, right? And I'm not going to name some. There's some I like, there's some I don't. And there's very few, but some of them are really awful. But you guys, like, do you have, like, where did this sort of design ethos come from? Do you have a fashion background? Have you designed it yourself? Like, there are people who have figured out how to get a jersey produced and sell it in Canada, as a Canadian company, but most of them don't live up to the standards. Now, a lot of them, because I choose with aesthetics first, I haven't tried, so I can't say whether they live up to the standards of performance, but live up to the standards of aesthetics that I am looking for when I'm spending good money on a kit. That is why, obviously, we've had MAAP and Attacker and Albion on and all these ones, because their aesthetics, their aesthetics line up with us, and then they happen to make some pretty good stuff. But so there are some Canadian brands that make kit, but a lot of it's really ugly. Like, where do you guys, what kind of side, besides obviously all skateboarders are cool, where do you guys sort of come from to be able to actually design something really nice?
I mean, neither Max or myself have like true design background, but we've been working in the fashion industry for a while. We're to the point where we know what we like, and we try to translate it into our cycling gears. Obviously, and we also really try to get inspired by stuff outside of cycling. So we look at what's happening in the fashion world, most importantly, but also in the skateboarding world. And that's not just for product design, but also for our marketing. When we shoot stuff, we try to make it like a maybe like have a spin that's a bit different than what we see in other cycling brand. Obviously, like it's super nice to have like this beautiful shot on the call and stuff like that. But we're in Montreal, so we have to work with what we have. Obviously, like Camille Hood is also very famous, and but it's a very tough climb to shoot. So obviously, we have to work with what we have, and
It's so steep.
so steep, so steep. But yeah, we really try to get inspired by outside of cycling. We're not blind to what's happening in the cycling world, but we really try to pick our inspiration outside of it.
Will we see a Dime Encore Encore collabo?
I mean, we know the guys, so maybe maybe at some point
That would be incredible. That would rival the Rafa Palace. Like it would be. I'm not even a skateboarder, and I would jump on that.
Oh, because
right
Dime
away.
is so much. I know you're wearing a Palace sweatshirt, but Dime is way cooler than
It is.
Palace.
It is.
Dime is funnier. Like they're just funny. You guys, what's interesting about the brand to Encore Encore is you're a relatively small brand, but you launched men's kit and women's kit at the same time. And there's a lot of brands that either decide to specialize in women's kit, or there's some brands that only start with men's kit, they add women's kit later. You guys went straight into the women's kit as well. How was that? You know, because you guys obviously can't really try on the kit. You don't really, two dudes, like you're not going to try on the women's kit and give an honest opinion of how it fits. How did you go about that, and why did you decide to do that as well?
That's actually something we have to debate when we started our brand. We didn't know if we wanted to go like straight start with men and then expand to women, or go right off the bat with a women offering. And we're glad we did, because if we look at our let's say our Instagram following, for an example, I would say it's split in the middle. So it's 50% women and 50% men's. Sales are the same, so it's probably like 50-50. Obviously, we have a bunch of girl friends that do ride, some of them better than us. So they were able to test our product and give us some feedback. But yeah, actually, we're pretty stoked that we decided to open up the women market, because
And what's nice about your women's kit as well is it's basically the same designs as the men's kit. You just changed the fit. I guess you didn't do like a, what do they say? Like
chamois is different.
shrink it and pink it. No, I know, but the look is your famous marble jersey. Like it's, the same for women as well.
Well, that's something that we see even on in my day-to-day work, because obviously Encore Encore is more like we like to call it like our 5 to 9 business work. Like that's something we see even on the fashion world. Like the women's want to wear the same product as the men's, but in a women's sizing or in a women's shape. They don't want to have like that pink. Well, not all of them want to wear like the pink jersey with like the flowers.
I love a pink jersey myself, but
I do too. But I can't. They don't need it. They don't need like the Hello Kitty stuff and all that girly things.
So what's next for the brand? Like, where are you guys going? What should we expect from you in the coming months?
Well, right now we're obviously working on spring 23. So I think that's just the next big step, and creating, to be honest, like Sam said, it's a 5 to 9 for us right now, just because, we have obligations, we have kids. It's, there's so much time you have in a day. We obviously want to, could this ever be a full-time job in the future? That'd be awesome. But right now it's really a passion project that we put as much effort as we can to, at least it looks like it's someone's full-time job. But I think it's really about continuing to develop the brand. Like the next things, it's like we haven't had long sleeves yet, because what we tried to do wasn't perfect. We want to really dial in anything that we put to the market, because like, as we said before, you have one shot. And I think that's really the most important thing is the new products. We want to make sure that it hits right when it does land in the marketplace. So I think what's next for us, trying to create content as much as possible, which is probably the hardest thing. Maybe it doesn't seem like it, but it's definitely the hardest thing out of everything that we have to do, from manufacturing to designing. Producing content is the toughest one. And then just really being involved in community in Montreal. And, probably for next year, we would want to obviously start, reaching out to Quebec City, maybe try and dabble into Toronto, because those are markets that we just haven't explored yet, or, been a part of the community, done rides with and such. So I think those are the next steps, at least from my point of view.
Warren and Tony really dialed into the Toronto community, so they can probably help you out.
Yes, send us a sign up link for $500 club membership.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Warren, why haven't we thought that for a Cycling Fashion Week club? What a hustle.
Cycling Fashion Week Club. Yeah.
OCA affiliate, Cycling Fashion Week, membership buy. We'll do
Membership is the way to go.
Membership. We do weekly rides. We cancel every week due to the weather conditions or something. We like plan them around bad days.
It's so exclusive that it accepts no outside members.
No, because we want the money.
That'll be our alternative to a Patreon. Instead of starting the Patreon for a podcast, we'll start a Toronto cycling club.
For sure. Did I miss something, Sam, for what we want to do next? Or
No, I think you nailed it. That's it. It's expanding the line to have a broader offering, but yeah, I think you nailed it.
And becoming, I mean, you already are the best brand in Canada. I know a lot of times when I talk to brands, people are always like, man, Tony really like shills for these people, but it's because we don't interview people we don't like. And we won't interview people we don't like. So we say this because we like them and we've got the stuff. And yes, it was given to us, but
we try to be positive despite all the Canal action happening. We try to be a positive podcast. All right, let's do the rapid fire questions. So we end every interview on this podcast with a set of rapid fire questions. So we'll just shoot some quick questions at you guys. You answer it in a relatively quick manner. You can say yes, no, or answer the actual question. So I'm going to start with the first one. And that's a very important one. What are your respective PRs up Camille-Wood?
I'm 4:45 up Camille.
Ooh, part of the sub 5 club.
Yeah, it's sub 5.
That's very good, actually. What about you, Sam?
Or it might be 4:47 or something. Yeah.
Just stick to 4:45. We're okay.
Yeah, it sounds better, right?
Yeah, I'm somewhere between 5 and 6. More
yeah,
I'm
5:40 as well. That's and actually I did the 5. You guys are both dads, so I'm sure you'll empathize. But I achieved my personal record up Camille-Wood literally 2 days before my daughter was born, and I was never able to match it back.
I've never been sub 5, Alex, since having a daughter as well. So if that can recomfort you.
Funny enough, I think I went up Camille-Wood only 5 times in my life. I would have to go back to my Strava. I'm in Montreal, and I think I've been there like 5 times.
Warren, what's your PR up? Because I wasn't using a computer, so
it's 2 seconds faster than Alex's PR.
That's all I want to know.
So the second, I've only done Chameleon twice, which were both on the little club ride. First time I just went up it to sort of, scope it out, see what it was like. And then second time I put in a bit of an effort. I'm disappointed in myself. I really wanted to be sub 5, but yeah, it's like 5.
It's a tough one.
30 something.
You had all the people in front of you that you were passing on the huge Cycling Fashion Week club ride. There's some factors there. Like I think if you could just do like a hard solo effort, like early morning, no one there. Well, there's always someone there, but less people there. I think that you might be able to hit that sub 5. I started riding Chameleon before Strava existed, and then the most recent time, which was when we were in Montreal a couple weeks ago. As everyone knows, because I don't know if I mentioned it enough that I'm not using computer or Strava this summer, so I have no idea what my time is, but it's probably like 3:45.
Okay, next question. Tell us, where's the best poutine in Montreal or in Quebec?
For me, it's in Quebec. Well, in Montreal, it's La Banquise, especially at 3 a.m. Usually, never disappoint.
Yeah, I think in Montreal, I have Dilalo that's in the southwest, but in all of Quebec is in Saint-Sauveur, where, me and Sam grew up. They have this place called Arc-en-Ciel in Saint-Sauveur, and it's like this really tacky, there's like unicorns on the walls and stuff. Honestly, it's the best poutine you can have. So if you ever go into the Laurentians, that's where you have to stop.
I want to answer this too, because to me, it's Chez Claudette in Montreal.
Chez Claudette? I'm not even sure I know this place.
It's on Laurier.
Oh yeah, okay.
Next question was, where's the best coffee in Montreal?
Le Club.
Yeah,
that's
I'm
the right
gonna say
answer.
For sure, Le Club is great. I like either or, so Le Club for sure after rides is fun, or Café Olympico.
When I started cycling, they were the only place that would play the Tour and the Giro for us, because it was like me and my 2 friends who started. No one else was really riding. This was like 15 years ago, and we would go in and they would like put it on.
Okay, next one: white or black shoes?
White road, black gravel. Yeah. I know you guys like gravel very much.
Well, I don't know.
That's what we claim.
That's what we claim. We like luxury gravel is what we like. White or black socks?
White road.
White road, black gravel.
Carbon, titanium, aluminum, or steel?
Carbon.
Whatever gets you out there and cycle.
Italian or Japanese fabrics?
Italian.
Italian, yeah. I mean, Japanese do offer some very interesting stuff, so maybe something that we'd like to experience in the near future. But for now, Italian all the way.
Okay, this is going to be a controversial one. Ride in the Eastern Townships or in the Laurentians?
Eastern Township.
Eastern, for sure.
Yes, that's the correct answer.
The scenery and everything, I prefer it in the Laurentian because you get all these hills and everything. I think on the Eastern Township, the roads are so much better. Like they're almost mint. Whereas in the Laurentian, like there's so many cracks, scars, a bit of rednecks too.
A lot of pickup trucks.
What's your après ride routine? Because you guys talk about the importance of the après ride.
Messaram,
We do the Messaram rides. If you guys are familiar with the brewery, they have like probably one of the better evening rides. So like they do like Mondays, and actually they do Mondays with the club, and they do Thursdays a fast ride and another fast ride on Saturdays. For sure, the best spot for beers after.
Okay, so one last thing, we offer all our guests an opportunity to throw something in the canal when they come on the podcast. So something that just annoys you from the world of cycling.
Sam, I know Sam has one too, but I have one that's happened to us recently, and then it's really people sandbaggers. So people that say, "Oh, my legs are dead. I'm gonna take it easy." And this has just happened to us when we went to Big Red. Me and Sam were not ready to ride 140 kilometers of true gravel, and everyone's like, "Oh, we're gonna take it easy." But as soon as it starts, everyone's like knife in their teeth, and they're just going at it, and they've abandoned you. You have a flat. It's like, see you later in 5 hours. Like, so it's every man for himself. So yeah, that's probably the one thing I hate the most about cycling.
That's actually a great one, and I hate that too. And it's funny because when I think of sandbaggers, I think of Zwift racing mostly. People who are like 4 watts per kilo guys, but they sign up for like the below 3 watts per kilo race. So thankfully, there's Zwift power to disqualify them from that. But it's really annoying. But yeah, it's true that sandbaggers like, oh, I'm not feeling it today, and then they just drop you.
I'm not a Zwift sandbagger, but I'm 100% guilty of this because at the start of every ride, I've been riding a bike for 15 years, and every ride feels like the worst ride, and I'm not going to do it. And then for some reason, every once in a while, or probably me more often than not, I just have this kick where I'm like, actually, wait, I feel pretty good. And then I just can't, like, I'll be like, oh man, I had such a bad sleep. I'm so tired, whatever. And then I'll kind of have this like shot of energy and be like, oh, fuck these people. Like, I'm riding fast today. So I'm one of those people.
Well, you say
That's
tired.
true.
We always hear this, me and Sam and Alex. I don't know, Tony and Warren, if you have kids, but I used to always say, oh, I'm tired. And when people tell me I'm tired now, I'm like, you have never been tired in your life. I promise you.
But you know what always happens to me is like, okay, I'm on a weekend. My daughter didn't have a great night. She might have woken up a few times. I had to go. I wake up the next day. I'm like, I feel terrible. I just feel tired. I didn't really rest. I'm going to take it easy today. I'm not going to ride. I will stay home and maybe have a nap. So then my daughter goes for a nap in the afternoon. I'm like, it's kind of nice out. Maybe I should go for a ride. So I get on the bike. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take it easy today. Going to keep it way below my FTP. But then I hit a climb and I'm like, I got to hammer it up the climb. And then you finish your ride, you come home, and then you're even more tired than you were. And then the next day and you do it all over again. And it's just a snowball of
Always.
So I think this one piece of our accessories can throw your kit way off. It's just before I said, I've been working for Oakley for 5 years. Their shades are the best. But there's this new Oakley Kato that they released, I think, this summer. It looks like you always look like almost like a RoboCop.
Yeah.
I think you can have the best kit, the best helmet, the best bike. If you throw these shades on, it's done. I think you're killing the whole style of the kit.
So we actually had a debate about this while Tony and I were riding last week. I hate them. I think they're terrible personally. And I'm like you. I love Oakley Sunnies. I wear Sutros that I think are great. But these ones I just can't. But Tony has a theory about them.
No, but I mean, so there are certain things in any sport that are what I like to call it's the Alexander Ovechkin effect. And so when Ovechkin came into the league, he wore a mirrored visor and these yellow laces, but he's so fucking good that there's just not shit you can say to him. And if you brought it back tomorrow, you can't say shit. The guy's the best goal scorer of all time. So in general, most people shouldn't wear that, the Katos. But if you're just that guy, if you're like the Alexander Ovechkin of your town and you're just that fast and that much panache and just everything, then you can wear it. So there's like one guy, like Alexander Ovechkin is the one guy in the NHL who can wear a mirrored visor and yellow laces. No one else can. So there's only one person in each town allowed to wear the Katos.
I don't think I can let that pass. They're terrible. Honestly, for me, it's
I
like it's
agree. They're no
radars
good.
and that's it.
I don't like them either, but I'm saying like it's like there's just certain things I just always think of Ovechkin where like people would wear that look to like the beer. I don't know if you guys played hockey, but like the beer league, and it's just like chirping all day because you're like, why are you wearing the Ovechkin look? But like you can't chirp Ovechkin.
Yeah,
I can
I
agree.
think I'd rather ride with Chris Froome's sunglasses than ride those radars and those.
Would you ride with Garen Thomas's sunglasses?
That-
though?
No.
No, I would take Garen Thomas's sunglasses over the Kato's any day of the week.
me too. Me too.
Oh yeah,
Me too.
Yeah.
100%.
All right, Maxime Boulet and Samuel Sanson from the upstart Montreal brand Encore Encore. Thank you very much for coming on Cycling Fashion Week. It was great to talk to you, hear about your story and what's next for the brand. For our listeners, follow Encore Encore on Instagram if you want to get a good sense of their products and their aesthetics. They're at encoreencore.cc, and their website as well is encoreencore.cc. Guys, thanks very much again. It was great to have you, and we'll be following what you guys are putting out in the next few months.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Okay, now it's time for our segment Into the Canal, where we throw something from the world of cycling or cycling fashion that we don't like into Montreal's scenic and probably highly polluted Lachine Canal. I did mine at the beginning this week, so again, we're constantly innovating here on Cycling Fashion Week, shaking things up. I threw the Vuelta in the Canal, which is an annual occurrence for me. So Warren and Tony will do their Canal now. Warren, what do you got?
Mine's actually relevant to what Tony was talking off the top about not having a computer, maybe putting it back on Strava. This week, I am going to throw average speed into the Canal. So that's a very relevant thing on Strava, but also, it's on your computer and whatever you track it. And the reason I'm throwing in the Canal is when I first got into cycling and I first started tracking, I rode without a computer for I think 2 years. And then my first computer was one of those like terrible cat eye ones where you had to wrap the sensor around your fork. It didn't, I don't even know what it tracked. It basically just tracked my speed and maybe the total distance. Anyway, average speed was really the first thing I cared to look at Strava, and I put a lot of importance into it. And that was, without a power meter and all that, it's kind of how I tried to measure if I was going faster. But the reason I'm throwing it in the Canal is I think most of our listeners and most experienced cyclists will know it doesn't really mean a lot because there's so many different factors that go into it. So it's kind of a junk metric. Like if you go out and ride by yourself into a headwind for 2 hours, you're not going to be going very fast, but you might be putting out crazy power. Or you can do a group ride with 18 people and average 37K an hour. And yeah, you're probably putting in work, but you're probably also doing like one pull every hour or something. It depends on the group dynamic, whatever. You could be putting in way less effort on a crazy fast looking ride based on average speed. And then, you could be riding in a headwind by yourself and putting out record power numbers. So I just think average speed it's just a junk metric. It's a vanity metric. People like to look at it and everyone's always trying to average a minimum of 30 kilometers an hour. That's metric. So what is that, like 18 miles an hour roughly? It's probably the same thing in the US. Don't get me wrong, I like when my rides are faster than 30K an hour, but like what I'm more interested in is my weighted average power, normalized power, because that really measures how hard of a ride it was. I was on a ride recently with a guy and he was joking about how gravel, like, you're putting out 400 watts, but you're only averaging 22K an hour. And he's right, because gravel on a road bike. So yeah, average speed, putting that in the Canal.
Yeah, solid Canal. Average speed is vanity, but I think it actually answers Alex's question about Strava earlier and why people use it. And it is 100% average speed. And that's why you see so many people who exclusively go on like 14 people group rides. Like I follow a lot of people on Strava that I don't think I've ever seen them on like a solo, or at least, they've posted a solo ride or maybe one or two people where they would be riding two abreast the whole time into the wind. It's like 10 plus more because they know on that ride that with all those turns, you know, having all those people they can get to like some you know, not crazy by obviously pro standards, but you know, they can do their ride 120K, 34K an hour, and it's just a total vanity metric. But I also want to say I love the vanity metric of it. I love that feeling. It's like you go on these like fast rides that you know are fast. It's like 25 people. You've actually probably barely averaged 125 watts, but you upload that 30 something K an hour for whatever the ride was. It looks cool. You feel really good about yourself. So I agree it's a junk metric, but it's also super important metric because it is that vanity Strava metric.
I mean, I can't argue with that. I do like vanity. That's why I'm on Strava, really. I'm actually paying the premium subscriber price because it actually adds a kilometer to my average speed on every ride.
That would probably be a smart way for them to generate revenue. Would be
I would pay for that.
Yeah, to make it. You can
to make
either
my ride seem faster.
You can make the ride seem faster. If you are more of a power guy, you could up your power per ride, or you know what you sort of put out kind of. Although I guess people would know if you had Strava Premium, people would know that you may be doing that. But I guess they couldn't guarantee it either.
So Warren, let's say people who follow you on Strava know what they're talking about, and the vanity metric becomes normalized power. Like the vanity threshold in average speed would be 30 kilometers per hour. What would the vanity threshold be for normalized power for like a 2 or 3 hour ride?
That's hard to say though, because power can vary so much by body
Per
type,
kilo.
right? Like
watts per kg.
That is a good question. It's got to be over 3.
Yeah, I was gonna say 3.
Yeah, I'd say 3. I'd say 3.
I'd say 3.2. If you got 3.2, you're looking pretty good.
Yeah, for like 2-3 hours, that's a solid. That's a hard ride. Yeah, let's go with 3.2 watts per kilogram.
So that's the new average speed. Everyone should
weighted average power, not average power. It's weighted average power, normalized power.
Yeah, weighted average power, but they need to. But then this also means Strava needs to update. Oh, can you change that on Strava? You know when you like click on a ride and it gives you like moving time, elevation,
I don't think you
average
can
speed.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Actually, Strava needs to adjust that, and they need to have watts per kilogram as like one of the main things. Like they can get rid of average speed and put watts per kilogram. That's got to be that's the new hot vanity metric. This was that ride was hard. I did 3.3 watts per kilogram.
Okay, Tony, what do you got in the canal this week?
So I have a Chameleon, and it's the Vuelta a España. No one got that joke? Okay. Anyways, we're moving to cut that out, Warren. Mine is one that I will not follow whatsoever. I'm throwing in the canal because I think it's kind of fun, but I'll still do the opposite of what I'm throwing in the canal, which is multiple bikes. My Marinoni has, unfortunately, was in a crash with me earlier this year, has a dent in it, and I'm finally taking it to Montreal to get it fixed by the beautiful people at Marinoni. But that means I've had the bike stripped for a little while and have not had a technical road bike. So I have my Cannondale Cat X cross bike. I've put put the road pedals on, put some 32C slicks, and it has performed quite admirably as a road bike on these road rides I've gone on. I haven't really felt any different. I mean, my Marinoni is a nicer bike for me, but than other sort of quote unquote road bikes I've had. And so part of me thinks, yeah, the multiple road bike thing is totally unnecessary. The road, the gravel, the cross. You can get one bike, probably multiple wheel sets, maybe a few front chain rings if you really need to change the gearing, and that's really all you need. So I'm throwing multiple bikes in the canal, but I also will continue to own multiple bikes and use them proudly and be very happy that I have multiple bikes, but I'm also throwing multiple bikes in the canal.
I'm on the verge of possibly getting a new cross frame that in theory could serve as a one bike to rule them all, and I just have no interest in doing that. I want to have different bikes for different things. I get what you're saying and how you're not going to abide by it, and I agree with you. It's completely feasible and possible, and we have a friend who does do that, and he's on a standard and very nice bike, and he doesn't seem to have any problems by using it for road, bike packing, gravel, cross, all that. But I don't know. I just like having different bikes.
Warren, I'm on board. I'm not going to get rid of either of my bikes. I'm going to keep them, and probably at some point I'll get other bikes. But just from a purely functional standpoint, once I sort of like set it up in a more roady fashion than I had it as kind of a gravel cross bike, obviously the tires make a bit of a difference. You know, you get them up to 80 or 85. Yes, I know that's a very high pressure for 32s, but I'm very heavy. You know, you set that up. I would say the road pedals make a big difference too. And these are all very easy things. Like I only have one set of wheels for this bike, so I've just been switching tires. But if you had like multiple set of wheels, especially if you had like, you know, some really deep dish sort of fast rims and stuff, pedal switching is very easy. So I'm just saying, I completely agree with you. Multiple bikes are awesome. It's just not needed. So I'm like, it's a canal that I don't really believe in.
But here's the number one reason to not have one bike. When that bike's in the shop, what are you riding?
Well, exactly. if I only had the Marinoni and it got dented and I had to strip it,
yeah,
then I would just have no bikes right now.
You wouldn't be going for rides. So that's like kind of the canal killer.
I think the only reason to have multiple bikes is if you own multiple homes and you don't want to schlep your bike from one location to another. That's when you start to invest in multiple bikes, and a certain bike will live in a certain home, and that's much more efficient. So you don't need to schlep across different locations. But I will say this though, I have been tending towards what Tony is saying. I have a road bike, steel road bike with 28 millimeter tires, and I've been using it for both road and gravel. Now, I do think you need a commuter as well, but I leave that outside of that discussion.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
It's a utilitarian kind of tool thing. It's not, we're talking about the sport of cycling here, not the means of transportation. But I agree. And in that sense, I guess I am following the spirit of Tony's rule by having only one bike per home at this point.
I have to say also, having the 32 mil tires on as like a road bike, but having that wide, which doesn't feel very wide on the kind of cross frame, but compared to the road bike where usually I have 27s or 28s, in the shitty roads of Toronto, I'm sure a lot of places can attest to these pothole filled roads. It's pretty nice too to be able to fit a 32 on. I'm not sure. I think my road bike might be able to, but it's a pretty nice feeling to have that wide of a tire on a road, a quote unquote road ride.
Just hypothetical canals in the canal for me.
Okay, next segment. Send us your bike and we will rate your bike for free. So again, listeners, send us their bikes. They send us pics either on a DM at Cycling Fashion Week on Instagram or email cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com. We do thorough analysis, review, constructive criticism, suggestions for upgrading of our listeners' bikes, and we give it a rating. This is a special one. So the story of this one is when we did our episode live from Le Club in Montreal about a month ago, where we interviewed Jared Smith, the founder of MAAP. We went on the group ride in the morning with the Le Club group ride, basically. And one of the founders and owners of Le Club was on the group ride. They were all there, basically. But this guy in particular, his bike was a beauty. And we said, we have to show this bike to the world. So we will post it to Instagram. Go check it out. Give your comments. Just you can add your own rating to the bike. So here's the email from Laurent, who is one of the founders and owners of Le Club. He says, hey guys, if you still want to rate my bike, here's a little more about it. This has been a 1.5 year long project. So I'll just introduce this masterpiece. So you can tell he's pretty confident about his bike right there, calling it a masterpiece. Brand. Okay, so very small brand. A lot of you will never have heard of that brand. It's called Etique Fabrication. It is from Montreal. The model, is there a model name? No, there isn't. It's full custom, and it's only their 4th of the production. So this one has the serial number 004. The design process started with a 3-hour analysis at Physio Velo, which is a positioning shop to make sure angles were done right. Also, this bike and choice of parts is made to be solid. He writes solid in caps. And Laurent tells us that he is a 6'4", 270-pound unit, basically. So this is bigger than Tony. Laurent is an absolute unit. He is built like a defensive end, and he needs a bike to be solid. The rest of the design was planned by the Etique team with pure road riding in mind. Etique philosophy is to be as ethical as possible by manufacturing locally and being supplied as close as they can. So they tried to choose all parts with this idea. So the frame was handmade in Montreal with Reynolds tubing from England. The wheels are NVSES 4.5 AR disc made in the United States. The group set is mechanical Dura Ace, which is from Japan, so that's not local. The headset and the bottom bracket is Chris King Bourbon, made in the good old US of A. The handlebar is Envy. The seat made in the USA. The seat is a Reform seat, which is made in Canada. The stem and the seat post are Thompson, which are made in the USA. Bottle cages, wolf tooth titanium, anodized matte bronze by Agave finish work, all in the United States. The tires are Soma Shikoro 28 millimeters made in Japan by Pana Racer. And the bell, he has a bell, super important to have it made in Montreal, the city of 100 churches. And it's a Nog Ol Lux bronze. The paint job is by a Montreal based painter who goes by Insane Custom Painting. And it's inspired by a Stel Bell design. He says he knows that the steer tube is long, but it was a specific demand to shorten the head tube in the design because it's just so ugly on tall guy bikes, he says. So he wanted a long steer tube as opposed to having more spacers. So that was his philosophy. He says that's a one and done. That's his only bike he will ever have. He put a lot of thought into it, and we will put the pic on our Instagram. I mean, should I start with this one? I guess I'll start, and then you guys can go after. I love how everything was just so thought out here. You can tell reading his email, like he left no detail, to fate here. He basically thought of everything. You look at the bottle cages that are bronze, so they match the Chris King headset, which is bronze, and they match various little tiny parts that are bronze. And the tires are, I'm going to say they're tan sidewall, but they're not really tan sidewall. They're bronze sidewall. They're like dark tan sidewall so that they match everything else. It's just so perfect. Yes, long head tube. Tony is no stranger to long head tube, so I'm not going to criticize that. For big boy bikes, that is preferable to having a stack of spacers. That being said, he could have slammed his stem though. Laurent, I don't care that you're 6'4". You got to slam that stem. Your back health. We don't really care about that here. Slam your stem, please. But everything else is so perfect. The paint is incredible. Only criticism as well, and actually maybe Tony will talk about that. But the Dura Ace crank maybe doesn't do justice to the beauty of that bike overall. You could have maybe gone with a more elegant crank there. That would be my only comment. But yeah, so the only two negative things I can find about this bike: unslammed stem and the Dura Ace crank. So I think I would deduct 0.125 for each, which gives me to a rating of 9.75 out of 10.
Alex, I think unfortunately you got it a little bit wrong. He was saying that he was allowing for a longer steer tube on the fork and more spacers in order to shrink the head tube a little bit.
Oh,
for
did I
tall
get that
guy
wrong?
bikes.
Well, you see that my English isn't very good. I
That's
can't
fine. Listen,
understand.
no criticism. But as also a tall guy, not quite as tall as Laurent. I think he's got a good inch on me, maybe even an inch and a half. I completely disagree. And I think actually someone made a comment seeing sort of photos of us on the little club ride. I have a very tall head tube on my custom steel bike in order so I can slam the stem. And to me, I that's where it's the only place I take a couple marks off, is that I think he should have. Hey, you know what? And probably I should have done this too. So I'm coming clean here. Keep the shorter head tube and just slam it and just hurt your back. It doesn't matter. What's more important is how great the bike looks with a slam stem.
Just embrace being uncomfortable.
Yeah, embrace being uncomfortable. But everything else, I mean, that's an easy one to sort of target. But you're right. All the little details. The Dura Ace crank, I don't want to get into it now because there's another bike we have in the queue. So another person we met on the club ride, and it has the older style Dura Ace 9000 crank, and I guess have a whole rant about how cranks have gone downhill, and I might save it for that one. But Obviously, it's a great group set, the Durace, but this is more Shimano's fault than Laurent's fault. I also want to talk about how underrated it is, and I guess this is up to the bike fit guy making it thing, to have the zero offset seat post with the saddle rail sitting nearly directly in the middle. Like, that's an underrated element. The placement of your saddle on the rails is an underrated element of a beautiful bike. Because if you're slammed too far forward or too far back on the rails, it throws off some of that symmetry and sort of elegance with it. So I think that that's an underrated thing, and I think the placement of the saddle, the choice of the zero offset, beautiful Thompson seat post.
And that's a long seat post too. He's got a very long seat post.
It's a very long seat post, quite a long.
Might be the
seat
longest
post.
I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd have to look at my bike, but anyways, yeah, I think just down to the details, everything is great. 9.8, I guess, is what you got to give it, because you do have to take away for the lack of slam stem. But everything else is it's really a work of beauty, and I think if anybody comments on the post anything negative, then they're Canal themselves.
You know what? All this talk about the head tube, the fact that he feels he needs to like excuse it. First of all, I don't think it's that big. It is big relative to other bikes, but when I compare this bike, this classic looking steel bike, to all of the aero optimized bike frames that, you know, might have a smaller head tube out there, this looks so much better. I don't care how big the head tube is. And I know we like to say, yeah, slam your back or slam your stem, hurt your back, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We all know we're not going to do that. So you know what, Laurent, be comfortable. I don't judge you. It's okay. Your bike still looks good in my books. Like,
this is because Warren doesn't slam his stem. Warren's trying to create an anti-slam movement because he won't drop that last 15 mil spacer or whatever he's got. 10 mil spacer.
Maybe that's, but you know what?
The anti-slam movement.
You guys have kind of covered off the aesthetics. Like, our listeners are going to see this image on our Instagram and know we're going to rate this close to a 10. But I did want to, the thing I wanted to focus on and give the most praise for was the fact that he has a bike from a brand that you literally, I don't think, can buy from. Like, if you go to their Instagram, which is at Etique Fabrications, like, there's no website. Maybe you could DM the guy. Like, I think it's just, maybe it's a friend of Laurent. I'm not exactly sure. It's somebody he knows who made the bike, but like, you literally probably can't get this same steel frame, which to me just gives it just a lot of something extra. Like, as I've mentioned before, I have a low, and I know currently you cannot order a low. That's because he's back ordered with orders. But like, when I actually saw nobody could order one, I was like, oh, that makes me feel more special. But with this is even more exclusive, because I don't know if you maybe just had to know a guy. That alone is like 10 out of 10. Also, the fact that Laurent rode up to the Le Club ride, and we all immediately looked at his bike and we're like, what is that? So to me, that's the ultimate sign of a like great bike, because we were all just like, what is that bike?
It's the ultimate luxury, as you say, Warren, to have a bike from a brand that you can't get a bike from, basically.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Nobody else can get that. It's the definition of unobtainium. The bike is made of unobtainium, and Laurent has achieved the ultimate luxury there.
Alex, quick question. It's matte, not matte black, obviously, beautiful color, but is the matte okay in this format?
Yeah, that's cool. I don't mind matte non-black. It's matte black I have an issue with. I don't think you would make a matte black steel bike. I haven't seen too many of those, but matte black carbon bikes are in the Canal. I'm sick of seeing them. It's going on 10 years now, almost, or I guess 8 years really, of matte black carbon bikes from the likes of Specialized and Cervelo. I think people have to stop with that. But matte kind of green turquoisey color, which he has there, is actually very original, and I'm not mad at it. Sure, I mean, I prefer glossy, but it still looks great. I don't mind it at all. This is probably as asymptotically close to a 10 that we'll get on this podcast. And as Warren said, when he rode up to the morning ride, we were all like, what the fuck is that? Very, very nice bike from Laurent here. Okay, that's it for another episode of Cycling Fashion Week. Eclectic episode this week. Thank you to Samuel and Maxime from Encore Encore. Check them out on Instagram at encoreencore.cc. Check out their new releases. You will be certain to see people riding around Montreal wearing the Encore Encore kit because they have been increasingly popular. Thank you to our sponsors over at Le Club, leclub.cc. The club believes that every cyclist should demand more from their cycling experience. And that is why, in fact, every cyclist should go to leclub.cc and pick up some incredible kit from the likes of Albion, MAAP, Fingers Crossed socks, Sweet Protection helmets, Alba Optics, glasses. They've got it all at leclub.cc. They ship worldwide, so it doesn't matter if you're not in Canada. You could be in the United States. You can be in the United Kingdom. You could be in Italy. God bless you. They will ship it to you, and they will even ship you their coffee. leclub.cc. Check them out. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Tony. Another great episode from you guys. Great performance this week, Warren, Tony. Congratulations. Would love to see what your normalized effort was for this podcast today. Thank you, and we will see you in a couple of weeks with more Cycling Fashion Week.
Unobtainium.